These changes are about acknowledging that this is a changing virus.
An Australian advisor to Aung San Suu Kyi detained in the wake of a military coup in Myanmar. The US records its highest daily COVID death toll as President Biden moves forward with his promised relief package. And the Perth Scorchers and Sydney Sixers face off for Big Bash glory at the SCG. Good evening and welcome to ABC News. I'm Mariam Saab. Well, those stories in just a moment, but first, authorities in Western Australia are dealing with two new emergency bushfires, this time in the state's southwest. An emergency warning is in place for people in or near the Yallingup town site, with authorities reporting the blaze there is out of control and unpredictable. They say it's currently moving fast in a southwesterly direction after starting near Duckworth Place in Naturalist. A second warning is also in place for Injitup, with homes there expected to be under threat within 2 hours. Now, this is a fast-evolving situation. We'll stay across developments for you here on the News Channel. Turning to the coronavirus situation, Victoria has recorded a second day without locally acquired cases after all of the close contacts of an infected hotel worker tested negative. But questions still remain over how the worker contracted the virus as investigations continue into the UK strain's possible spread between hotel rooms. It's brought about new changes to the already overhauled quarantine program and to the arrangements for crowds heading to the Australian Open.
Mask on, mask off. Fans attending the Australian Open will now need to mask up whenever the roof is closed, after rules for wearing masks in Victoria were reintroduced earlier this week.
When the roof's closed, it's like any other indoor setting.
The updated rules come after a quarantine worker at the Grand Hyatt tested positive to the highly contagious UK strain, sending more than 1,000 people into isolation. So far, all 17 close contacts of the worker have tested negative. 767 of his workmates are in the process of being tested. Another 562 secondary close contacts are in isolation. There's also 362 people who visited 14 exposure sites who have so far been identified. The results of more than half the 1,100 primary close contacts have returned, and all are negative.
We do need to see that full 14 days of the incubation period play out before we can be absolutely happy that we're in safe territory.
While authorities are still trying to understand how the worker acquired the virus, a case of transmission between two families across a hallway at the Park Royal Hotel has prompted new rules for hotel quarantine. All quarantine workers will now have to wear face shields on top of face masks. Buffers will be set up around large family groups, and food delivery and testing times will now be staggered to stop hotel room doors from being opened at the same time. Medical experts have been calling for health authorities to do more to prevent the aerosol transmission of the virus in hotel quarantine. Victorian officials have since ordered a second review into ventilation, but say poor airflow isn't to blame for the recent infections.
We rejected a number of hotels at the time, and the ones that we have used throughout this program are hotels that do not share air between rooms or into common areas.
These considerations should have been made. The government has had over a year to get this right, and they're still making these decisions up as they go along.
With the Australian Open starting on Monday, the next few days of testing in Victoria will be critical. Leanne Wong, ABC News, Melbourne.
West Australians have largely returned to life as normal, re-emerging from a 5-day snap lockdown. The strict lockdown was imposed on more than 80% of the state's population last Sunday after a hotel quarantine security guard tested positive for the UK strain of coronavirus. No new community cases were recorded for the week, meaning the lockdown could be lifted as hoped at 6 o'clock last night.
People have been great. The systems have worked effectively. People have followed the rules. I just urge people to continue to follow the rules.
A number of restrictions remain in place for Perth, including mandatory face masks in most public spaces. The federal government says it's deeply concerned about the detention of an Australian advisor to Aung San Suu Kyi in Myanmar. Sean Turnell, who's also an economist from Macquarie University, has confirmed that he is being held.
I'm just being detained at the moment and perhaps charged with something. I don't know what that might be, but could be anything at all, of course. Everyone's being very polite and all that, but obviously I'm not free to move or anything like that.
This is the first known arrest of a foreign national in Myanmar since Army generals seized power. Myanmar's fragile democracy was upended last week when they ousted Suu Kyi's government and took her into custody. Thousands of protesters took to the streets of Yangon today, demanding the release of the country's leader. A third person has drowned in less than 36 hours on Gold Coast beaches as massive swells continue to lash the Queensland coast. The 34-year-old Victorian man was swimming at Mermaid Beach despite beaches being closed by lifeguards due to dangerous conditions.
A deserted Gold Coast beach, the site of another drowning tragedy.
You wouldn't want to swim in it.
A 34-year-old Victorian man went for a swim in an unpatrolled area of Mermaid Beach just after 7:30 this morning. Lifeguards weren't due to start patrols until 8 o'clock. Beaches along most of the Gold Coast have been closed due to the treacherous conditions, with swells reaching 2 metres.
Even standing that much, you feel it pulling you out. Yeah, sad. Sad.
2 volunteer lifesavers tried to rescue the man before clocking on for duty.
They're trained to be in the water and doing the rescues, but doing something like this is they're probably not trained for, and it's quite hard for them.
Witnesses have told ABC it was a difficult task for lifeguards just to reach the man because the swell was so unrelenting. When they did bring him to shore, responders worked for 15 minutes until ambulance officers arrived, but it was too late. It's the third drowning on the Gold Coast in less than 36 hours after 2 people went swimming on Thursday night. The 29-year-old Victorian woman was found dead a short time later. Last night, the body of missing 32-year-old Jake Jacobs was recovered at Narrow Neck by a TV weatherman.
When we got closer, it became pretty evident that there was a body floating in the water.
We want people to come to Queensland, to our beaches and explore and make sure that they're having a good time, but we want to make sure also that you're having a safe time.
Jake Jacobs was a gym manager at Broadbeach. Colleagues posted on social media he was instrumental in helping to grow the club, a place many called their second home.
People just are not listening, and outside the hours of the lifeguards and lifesavers, so you just have to listen. There's no red and yellow flags, don't go swimming, it's a simple message. Families
flocked to the few open beaches today, but most stayed out of the water.
We're expecting these conditions to ease tomorrow and then to ease further again on the Monday.
Jessica Stewart, ABC News, Gold Coast.
Members of Adelaide's Chinese community, backed by unions and the Labor opposition, have rallied against what they have described as endemic wage theft in local businesses. It follows days of outrage stemming from a viral video showing a woman's alleged assault in a dispute over unpaid wages.
What is slavery? No. Legal pay? Yes. Violence? No. Wage theft? No.
Dozens of protesters gathered in the heart of Adelaide's Chinatown to demand justice for workers being paid less than minimum wage.
Wage theft is more than slavery, and it's also a form of discrimination against the vulnerable minority groups in society.
The protest comes a week after this video went viral, sparking public outcry. It shows a 20-year-old Chinese exchange student slapped and kicked in an alleged dispute over wage theft at this Guja Street tea shop. A 39-year-old man was later charged. Fun Tea has denied the pay claims, and the Fair Work Ombudsman is investigating. But many in this crowd say wage theft is widespread.
I asked the boss to raise my wage, but my boss he refused that.
$10 per hour. That wage is pretty common when you work in Asian supermarkets.
Workers' rights advocate Jackie Chen says many migrant workers are silenced by fear or a lack of local knowledge.
They have no idea what's the minimum wage. They have no idea who should I go into looking for help. Most of them not fluent in English.
Protesters say this rally is a call to workers to stand up for their rights and to organisations like the government and universities to educate workers about what those rights are. The government says help is available.
Any concerns that anybody has in relation to particular cases, they need to take those to the independent regulators.
Workers' rights are under attack.
A chorus of voices that refuse to be silenced any longer. Sarah NEWSThe, ABC News, Adelaide.
The expert team investigating the origins of coronavirus in Wuhan have spoken out for the first time on the access they're being given by China. Scientist Peter Daszak, one of 10 in the World Health Organization-led team, says they've been granted full access by Chinese authorities to sites and personnel requested. The team is now combing through samples collected from the highly anticipated trip to the Wuhan seafood market, which had been linked to the first cases.
It's not a glamorous trip. We were in the toilets, in the air vents, looking down under the grids. You know, what's it like? What's the infrastructure like? What's the sewage system like? What's the where the bats are? We've got a bat expert from Japan who spent half an hour looking for bat feces, rat feces.
The team are expected to reveal any discoveries on Wednesday before flying out. The United States has recorded the highest number of coronavirus deaths in a single day, with more than 5,100. 1,500 were from one state after a backlog of data was added. But the daily figure has remained high for weeks, despite falling infections and the rollout of multiple vaccines. And it wasn't the only grim figure revealed to Americans. New jobs data has confirmed its path out of recession will be slow and painful. Correspondent Greg Jennett reports from Washington, D.C.
Amtrak Joe jets out as Air Force Joe for a quick dash to Delaware. Still home, away from his current home. After 16 days in the White House,
talking about the recovery package.
The president's done working for this weekend.
We can't do too much here. We can do too little.
But work and jobs will remain a preoccupation when he returns. America doesn't have enough of either. The pandemic stripped 11 million away. Last month, only a paltry 49,000 jobs came back. Low-paid and disadvantaged workers are languishing.
They were the first to lose their jobs. That is what economic crises do. They hit people of color harder and longer.
On the January job numbers, it'd take 16 years to return to pre-pandemic employment levels. The White House is taking a shot at doing it in one.
We do have the tools to reduce a lot of suffering in this country. We just have to choose to use them.
His tool of choice is more than $2 trillion in spending.
The risks of doing too little are far greater than the risks of doing too much.
But it's slow going convincing Republicans.
Our hope would be that we would have bipartisanship.
And if a standoff drags on...
The Senate being equally divided, the Vice President votes in the affirmative.
The President wants them to know Democrats could go it alone, using Kamala Harris as Senate tiebreaker.
If I have to choose between getting help right now to Americans, I'm going to help the American people who are hurting now.
The economic costs so far and those still to come are mind-boggling. Some estimates stretch as high as $16 trillion US. Lives lost are edging close to 500,000. But there are some tentative signs of improvement too. Vaccine supplies are picking up each week in what's fast becoming a major military operation to shield America from the virus. More than 220 troops are being sent to California to run a new federal injection megacentre.
Now that's just one team of this initial tranche of 1,100.
Hundreds more will fan out to other states.
Okay, thank you.
Probably not the shots they signed up for, but important all the same. Greg Jennett, ABC News, Washington.
There's a new mystery in Russia's intensifying crackdown of its biggest critic and his supporters. The doctor who treated Alexei Navalny for poisoning has suddenly died, and the Kremlin has expelled 3 diplomats, accusing them of supporting the jailed opposition leader.
Unshackled and unrestrained. The outspoken Kremlin critic was back in court just 3 days after being sentenced to almost 3 years jail for a probation violation. This time, he didn't hold back.
Будете, гореть в аду за то, что вы взяли деда 95-летнего, нацепили на него эти медали и используете здесь.
The opposition leader is facing new charges of slandering a war veteran online. The offence would usually attract community service or a fine, but Navalny is being threatened with prison, although it's not expected to add to his current sentence.
Отвратительные родственники этого пожилого человека, я не знаю, кто еще, используют его просто как куклу. Ну, очевидно же.
Outside court, a small but daring group of supporters gathered. After more than 5,000 of their peers were arrested during nationwide protests. 3 European diplomats are among those feeling the wrath of Moscow, expelled for taking part in the rally.
Our appeal to his release.
The tension could be felt across town. An EU chief calling for Navalny's release after meeting with Russia's foreign minister. The Kremlin called the EU an unreliable partner and continued its denial of poisoning Putin's biggest critic.
I have repeatedly said this. No doctors have found Novichok that allegedly poisoned Navalny. It was only found by German military doctors, which says a lot.
And in another twist to the trial, the doctor who treated Navalny after his poisoning has died. No cause of death has been confirmed, but it's yet another question Moscow is being pressured to answer. Nayan Kim, ABC News.
Hollywood has lost another legend with the death of Academy Award-winning actor Christopher Plummer at the age of 91. In a career that spanned 7 decades, Plummer delivered a long list of memorable roles in film, television and theatre. But it's one of his earliest big-screen performances that he'll be long remembered for.
These are a few of my favourite things. When the dog barks.
His portrayal of Captain Von Trapp in The Sound of Music became Christopher Plummer's best-known role.
Hello?
Fräulein, did I not tell you that bedtime is to be strictly observed in this house?
But for years, Plummer detested it, famously calling the film The Sound of Mucus.
I was just a little disappointed that some of my better roles were not being seen as famously as the captain.
Christopher Plummer was born into a well-off Canadian family, the great-grandson of a Prime Minister. He made his Broadway debut in 1954, specialising in Shakespeare.
I've played all sorts of huge parts in my time that were much larger. King Lear, Hamlet, Henry, name them.
Versatility was a hallmark of his career.
And this is General Chang, my Chief of Staff.
I have so wanted to meet you, Captain.
He won a swag of awards, including Tonys and Golden Globes. And in 2012, aged 82, became the oldest actor to win an Oscar for his supporting role in Beginners.
When I first emerged from my mother's womb, I was already rehearsing my Academy thank you speech.
6 years later, he was nominated again for playing John Paul Getty in All the Money in the World, stepping in after Kevin Spacey was removed from the role.
The great struggle in life is coming to grips with what that price is.
From his Sound of Music co-star Julie Andrews, the world has lost a consummate actor today, and I have lost a cherished friend. Christopher Plummer died at his Connecticut home with his wife Elaine Taylor at his bedside. One of acting's greats, gone at 91.